This lowers our 2x2 formation. Road change now, we go racing for the first time. Lowers our 2x2 formation. Road change now, we go racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action, it's go.
It's very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in. This has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
Drop downhill there, head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course. There's another one off through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that from the inside line. Yes,
he did.
Through he goes.
Good evening everybody and welcome back to another Apex Online Racing stream here for round 6 I believe of the AOR Championship here on ACC at Spa-Francorchamps. And joining me once again in the commentary box, Tim, good to have you back buddy, how are you?
Hey mate, yeah, I am all good. I am well rested after doing a bunch of the coverage for the Endurance Championship that's also going on. I can't remember the next date. I'm sure it's the end of this month. So I'm well rested. My voice is pretty much back after doing the later stint, and hopefully no internet issues for me this evening. But we won't get overly excited. But luckily, John is the man streaming this evening, so it shouldn't interrupt. I might just disappear at some point, so hopefully it's all good. How have you been? Have you been this week, mate? All good?
Yeah, I've been good, thank you, buddy. And yeah, just waiting intensely for the next round of this championship because we had quite the cracker at Hungary, which had quite a vast range of levels of interesting side of things. We had some great on-track action, and we did also experience an interesting mixture of technical difficulties, unfortunately, that if nothing else provided an extra layer of entertainment that we're not potentially aiming for, but we did get to see a grand amount of flying cars, if nothing else. But like you say, if nothing else, we should hopefully see some good, consistent action on the track today. And I think with the weather that we're likely to see here at Spa, that we've got all the foundations for what should realistically be a very entertaining race for racecraft and strategy. We saw loads of different approaches in yesterday's race in Tier 1, and I think we're going to have hopefully a similar level of excitement today here in Tier 2.
Yeah, the weather really varying last night in the Tier 1 race. Sort of that typical European weather where it blows in sort of random gusts of hard rain and then disappears again. So should be a good, interesting one. Not just a case of, oh, it's a wet start and a dry finish. Okay, the first of the times is starting to come in now. Marco Yonkers with a 2:17.9. So that's the opening time. That's a really strong time straight away. That's much quicker than anything we saw in practice. And Marco obviously 7th in the championship at the moment, so he will be very pleased with that. Slightly thin numbers on the grid this evening. Obviously, still things around the world are, let's just say, quite active at the moment. So understandably, lots of people not able to race. So our best wishes go out to everybody involved and affected by the events around the world at the moment. And also, currently, Discord is having a complete meltdown and a fritz. So Discord's down as well. So we're probably a few people short just because people unaware that we are still going ahead, as we are obviously unable to contact anybody when the Discord is completely down. So a little bit of a short grid, but I'm sure these lads will make the most of it. There may only be 17 of them on circuit this evening, but no doubt there will be close battles the entire way through.
Yeah, I have no doubt about that. I was just having a look at Marlon, as we didn't get to interview either of the Vanwall SimSport guys from last week, where Connor Wright ended up winning that race with Marlon, his teammate, finishing second. They did both join for an interview, but unfortunately, because of the difficulties that we had, we couldn't end up actually speaking to them at the end of the stream. So hopefully those guys might be about for an interview at the end of today. But I was just having a look at Marlon, because if my Delta is correct, he is on quite a significant improvement and could be one to watch and get close towards top of grid. We've seen the Ferrari yesterday be incredibly strong in around this circuit. We saw Hugo Merles almost taking what would have been a remarkable victory in Tier 1, but just didn't quite have the tyres left in the car by the end. But that Ferrari is so strong on all of the straights here, and it's got such a good downforce package, as Marlon then sneaks in just behind his teammate Connor, who snuck in a bit out of nowhere. But I tell you what, who really came out of nowhere there, Tommy Razier, who is still our only double winner of the grid, and he has put in a fantastic time, a 2:17.6. And looking like he was almost fastest in all of those sectors. I think the only sector that he wasn't purple in was that first sector, where that Ferrari of Marlon is very, very strong. But a very good effort there from Tommy, who, after the last couple of races with how Caracas has performed, Tommy and the likes of some of the other guys have really started to kind of close in a bit towards that championship lead, and with still a decent amount of rounds remaining on the championship, we could see this all start to come together to maybe be quite a titanic fight by the time we reach the final race.
I reckon so. I say, Tommy Razier currently first in the championship with 371 points. Caracas is down in second place after last round with 364 points. So there's a little bit of a buffer there, but not enough to really sort of, deaden things off quite yet. Down in third, a little bit of a gap. Connor Wright with 305 points. Fourth is Ollie Yars with 273. Fifth is Mark Toll with 271. Then Marlon Andrade, who he's had some great pace. And actually he's had some reasonable finishes, but sadly I think it was the second race he came 34th overall, which really hurt his overall standings. He's in 6th place with 264 points. Marco Yonkers, 203 points in 7th. Ben Keys with 193 points in 8th. Garbus in 9th with 183. Sorry, it was 193 for Ben, 183 for Garbus, and Yang Climbs with 179, 10th overall in the championship so far. To say, amazingly, Tommy, he obviously round one first.
Sorry, huge effort there from Marlon at 2:17.4. We were watching on board with him during that lap, and he gained a ton amount of time in the bus stop chicane there. Got an extra 2/10 out of that, and that has shot him up to the top of the time sheet. So looking very, very strong. Once again, Korekis has also snuck in to provisionally be on the front row as well. But lots and lots of changes through the field, and Mirveld making his way up to P6 for the time being as well, which is a bit more in line with where we're used to seeing him. He had a bit of a poor showing at Hungary, but yeah, good resurgence there. But yeah, sorry to cut you off there, Tim. It was getting pretty interesting with the challenge for pole with those last couple of laps coming in.
Yeah, no, absolutely fine, mate. Yes, having a quick look at Mirveld, currently in 11th place in the championship with 174 points. Obviously did great in the first race, just missed out on the podium, came in 4th. Second race was a 16th, so not brilliant, but also not too bad, but considering the size of the grid. 4th place in the third race again, but then he's had 2 DNFs in a row, so really not worked out in his favour so far this championship. It was a Grantis Caracas, he's second place, and he's had a second, a third, and a first, and then he had an 8th and a 9th. So he, realistically, if he wants to continue taking the fight to Tommy in first position, he needs to try and get back into that winning streak again. I mean, and it is possible he could do it here at Spa. It's a circuit that lots and lots of guys know really well. I mean, I'd be surprised if you find a public server that isn't Monza or Spa.
Just look at Benjamin King. He's just fired himself off the circuit going through campus there. So he was on a pretty good improvement there, but just took a little bit too much speed. But yeah, carry on with that. I'll try and thought, Tim.
No, so I was just saying, I think unless Caracas can start getting himself sort of squarely back up near the front, he is going to face issues. I mean, the main thing is that Tommy has had 2 pole positions. That's what's really bolstered his championship points. As obviously with 2 firsts, a second, a 4th, and a 28th. So you would think that Caracas would be even closer, but with his finishes. But it's just the way the point system works. Pole position really does give you a decent boost of points, but obviously with a slightly thinned out grid, drivers that are usually a bit further down the grid, sort of like in the into the 30s, obviously the lowest they can go currently, as long as they finish, is 17th. So that's possibly a bit of a bonus for some of the guys that are a bit further down the field. A couple of extra points just for showing up and obviously seeing this race through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we saw it at Hungary really with there were drivers there that typically haven't been able to quite make their way towards sort of the pointy end of the grid, but the reduced grid sizes obviously naturally bring that distance down quite considerably. And there were some good efforts there from people last week at Hungary, and Spa, we have seen how crazy the starts can be, just trying to survive to the end of the first run to the Kemmel Straight, even when it's in dry conditions, can be enough of a difficult task in itself. So, it really does reward those that are looking to just try to keep it clean, maybe being a bit more cautious and knowing that they don't have the outright pace to be challenging for some of those kind of extra high points paying positions, but with just a little bit of caution can really end up reaping the reward from other people's mistakes.
Yeah, as you said, just making it to the end, massive difference. It really is quite often a race of attrition is what gives you points. It doesn't, you can have outright pace, but you've still got to finish completely, haven't you? I'm just having a quick look here. Discord is back up and alive, so we will be able to keep an eye on the race control as they come in. Don't think it was too many penalties last night, but I'm sure we'll see the odd one this evening. It just, it's Spa. It's quite possibly going to be very wet. So Ben Key's in 4th place, and he's now, this is probably going to be his last attempt, just under a minute left. So most of these guys that are out, this is going to be their last chances.
That's a good improvement from Marlon there. A 2:17.2 from him. That is a fantastic lap, and he'll get one more flyer, just like Ben Keys. And there's a few... Oh, it was Yonkers and Oliars put in some good times there as well. Crossed the line basically right next to each other, and yeah, the two McLarens slotting themselves into second and third, and then McLarens of Korekis and Razir as well in fourth and fifth. But that's a good effort from those two. Oh, Oliars, I think that could be a lap invalidation. I could be wrong, just because he came through Eau Rouge. If it wasn't, he does seem to be continuing on. If it was valid, that was right on the border of the limit. The McLaren...
he's still valid. Yeah, car number 21 is still valid.
So he's just about managed to maintain the legitimacy of this lap, but there's really fine lines. Oh, that was a wide exit there from Yonkers, and he is off the circuit on the exit through that Lecombe section, so that is going to be his effort done. Oliar's still putting on a good charge with his lap, but yeah, you have to be so careful through that section, and the McLaren, a car that sits incredibly low to the track in order to really extract the most out of its aero package. And through Eau Rouge, with the way that some of these updates have panned out with suspension and tyre physics, we're sometimes seeing a bit more bottoming out in these cars. It's trickier to get that car through there flat out now. Things like the Mercedes suffer with it as well, where there's just these random occasions where the car will just bottom out a bit, and it can really upset and unsettle the car. And Oliars was right on the limit there of invalidating that, but he has just about managed to keep it. And that was extremely close to the limits again. That was fully stretched out on the exit as he then heads up towards Blanchimont, but I think this is going to be a reasonably good effort, although I'm just going to quickly jump ahead with Marlon, who, if my timing sheet is correct, this could be a huge lap, and it's the first 16 of the session. That is a fantastic effort there from him. Oliars is going to be the next of our sort of front runners. He looks like he might be able to jump Yonkers here if he can finish this one. He does. 217.4, only just about does it. We've got Korekis, who then takes that and goes up to P2, but he's still 3.5 tenths away from Marlon. What can Razir do as he heads towards the line? It'll be P2 for him as he snatches that front row spot from Korekis, and that is very, very interesting and important for the championship standings potentially. But Marlon, an absolutely huge lap. I think we've still got the McLaren of a Struch out there, so he might be able to jump up a bit. But what an absolutely tremendous effort from Marlon there.
Yeah, 6th place for a Struch. That's a big jump. That's a really
brilliant
good
effort from him. Really good stuff.
Just trying to work out whereabouts in the championship he is. I've probably just been blind and scrolled right past him. Down in 21st place with 69 points overall. Nice.
It was he's not a driver that's been too far up the grid kind of usually, but you know, we said about how, you know, these reduced grid sizes. Also, McLaren a strong car around the circuit. Trevor Wenham took that to victory yesterday in quite an exciting finish in Tier 1. So we know it to be a strong car around here. But yeah, a very good effort there from Astruch to firmly put himself in that competing pack of the top 10. But yeah, what an interesting qualifying session. And Marlon, the only driver to get into the 2 minute 16s there. That was a fantastic lap time from him, and what a way to put a marker down before the race has even started.
Yeah, so Sector 1 and Sector 3 he was fastest, and he was basically that 0.3 faster through Sector 3. So obviously that Ferrari feeling really good coming through. Oh, quick look at the weather. It's cloudy at the moment, but it's saying in 15 minutes time heavy rain. So what are guys going to do about tyres? Because the track is optimum at the moment. So realistically you would think they need to be on dries to start. Otherwise those wets are going to be absolutely destroyed. And we saw that in the endurance race. We actually saw someone, I think it was car number 720. I can't remember exactly which team it was. I think it was Caracas was one of the drivers, but they tried to stay out on wets when it was quite dry. And although it seemed like it was all coming together for a little while, just the tyres just went off so quickly. They'd overheated early and they had nothing left. So going to be very interested to see how people deal with these different temperatures and race conditions this evening.
Yeah, it could be. It's likely to be a huge aspect of the outcome, and another factor to consider that the formation lap around here at Spa is huge. That's why it's so costly to get a drive-through penalty here. Is just because the length of the pit lane. There's a 15-second penalty going on for Mkovkin there, carried over from last race. But any penalties around here for drive-throughs or anything like that are tremendously severe because of the length of that pit lane, the length of the lap overall. And the thing is that the other factor that introduces is that the clock is still ticking, and whilst for the last couple of minutes, within 15 minutes we're expecting heavy rain, there is that 10-minute region where we don't exactly know just yet what's going to happen, and by the time this clock ticks down towards 0 and everyone starts starting the formation lap, it's going to be a good 3 minutes, if not more potentially, for that lap to be completed, and by that point, well, for all we know, there could be rain within 2 laps, and that might make starting on the wet tyres a potentially feasible strategy. So, do you gamble on it being wet weather for a huge chunk of this race and risk burning out those tyres in the first couple of laps? Or do you just take the safe option for the beginning, go on slicks and try to see how long can you stay out on them as the rain starts to come down? But with that level of rain around a circuit as dangerous, inherently dangerous as Spa, in the early laps where everyone is close to one another, you really don't want to be on completely slick tyres as they're losing temperature and pressure as that rain then starts to come down heavier and heavier. So this is going to be a really interesting series of strategy calls because they've got 10 seconds left to make a decision. That weather forecast has not changed, but I would not be surprised if potentially that could end up moving to 5 minutes away from the first signs of rain by the time these guys complete the formation lap. So this is going to be a very, very interesting start and setup for this race.
Yeah, as you said, obviously the time already sort of trickling away for them. It's it's so risky, isn't it? I mean, I don't even know what I'd do. I genuinely don't know what I would do in this situation, whether I'd start on wets or dries. I mean, like you said, trying to drive this circuit in the wet is, on slick tyres is going to be absolutely impossible, especially sort of through Sector 1. Obviously, you've got Arouge is an absolutely terrifying corner in the dry, let alone in the wet with slicks. So it's certainly one of those circuits where you just cannot afford to make the wrong call.
There's also the wind as well to factor into this. At the moment, we've got a completely still and dead wind. So, that's suggesting that once this rain arrives, it's going to be around for a while. This, we wouldn't typically expect, Spa, we do have varying conditions, but usually when a condition arrives, it very rarely has such a dynamic back and forth, especially with such a level of dead wind and with the weather mechanics in this game. That's usually quite a good gauge of the variability that you might have in the weather. So, again, that's something where the pit stop here is such a long pit stop. If you can get away with not making an extra pit stop because you go straight for those wet tyres and it rains the entire race, is 2 laps of dry level overheating and degradation. Are other people going to be able to make that up if they've started on slicks and then have to go to wets? Possibly, but that's what leads to such exciting races around here, and I really think that this is going to be a key fundamental aspect to how this entire race plays out.
I will say that also looking at the weather report, am I seeing that it's just turned
it's switched to dry?
So if anyone has started on wets, I mean, there could still be that weird shower in that little weird 5-10 minute period between the 5 and 15 minutes.
Which entirely destroys my previous comment.
Yes, it's... Oh, Andre, come to a complete stop. Was he maybe just letting everyone catch up with him, possibly? I'm not sure.
Maybe to get a bit more temperature in his brakes, or maybe getting a warning from the game for being a bit too far ahead of the pack.
Yeah, quite possibly, and suddenly thought, oh, I need to stop that, because especially here, you do not want to get teleported to the pits, because it's like a small trip to the shops, isn't it? Go through the pits at Spa. It's crazy. You've obviously got the F1 pit, and then you've got the endurance pit, and it's a long drive. I mean, I always prefer, if there's a pit box, I like it as close to the pit exit as possible, so at least when you leave the pit, you are leaving on reasonably warm tyres. If you end up getting stung with a pit box that's quite near the entrance, when you go to leave, the entire time you're trundling along that pit, your tyres are absolutely hemorrhaging temperature and usually PSI at the same time, so it can be a real sting in the tail. Yeah, all across the board now, weather-wise. It's cloudy but sunny.
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
can still possibly throw up a spanner, but I just don't think it is. I think it's going to stay dry. So anybody that's... Oh, Ben King already returned to the pits. What's happened there?
Oh, that is a surprise. Maybe he was a driver that gambled on taking wet tyres, and he's decided that it's just not going to be worth completing that first lap on those tyres, and is switching over to dry. So we'll have to see if he returns to the action. Once all of the other cars go past him, he will be allowed to leave the pit lane and maybe work out for the best if there is a great deal of carnage, which hopefully there won't be, but we have seen it before through a Rouge.
Rain coming in 5.
And rain coming in 5, so there's that brief shower sneaking up, but I think by the looks of it then, it does seem to be light rain, but it could get a bit heavier, so it might make for some exciting action, but I think in terms of how long it lasts, it might be brief, at least for the time being. A quick roundup of the grid before they head off. Marlon on pole, Razier P2, Karekes P3, Olians P4, Yonkers P5, Astruch P6, Keys P7, Vince van Meerveld P8, Terminen in 9th, Makovkin in 10th, Conor Wright in 11th, low position for him. Benjamin King starting from the pit lane now, York in 13th, Thang in 14th, Gosling in 15th, Shooter 18th, 16th, and Vioras in 17th. And 30-second penalties on Struch and Makovkin. But as these guys head towards the line, it is going to be lights out in just a second, and they're off. That was a poor start there for Marlon, and Razier already jumping side by side. A little bit of contact as they go onto the entrance of Eau Rouge. Marlon getting all sorts caught up over the curve. Karekes trying to take advantage of that. He gets a slide himself as they head through Radion, and now becomes the battle of the slipstreams. Razier does seem to have broken away just a little bit. Can Karekes do anything about that Ferrari? That Ferrari is mighty fast in a straight line, but there is the BMW of Conor Wright in the background trying to make moves as everyone bunches up through Les Communs. There's contact there between Meerveld and Makovkin. There's another Bentley off as well. I think that's Matt York that got caught up in that. So incidents already through the field. Then Oliars and Yonkers going side by side. Yonkers looks like he's managed to make that position stick, and Conor Wright, very opportunistic move with a great start from him, I think, overall. As then a Struch sneaks up the inside of Oliars as well. So Oliars is toppling positions. Has he started on the wet tyres, or has he just not got any sort of pressure or temperature in them at the moment? But he is just tumbling down the order. I'm sure he must be on wet tyres, because he's just lost about 7 or 8 positions in 2 corners. So whatever that strategy call is from Oliars, that has not worked out at all there. But one driver that made a tremendous amount of positions up on that opening lap was Conor Wright. I think he started in P12 and he's already up to P6. So looking to carry on that good form from last week. But generally speaking, a fairly clean start overall. But what a start from Razier.
Yeah, really good start with those. I was having a quick look back at that incident, obviously up at the end of the Kemmel Straight. It wasn't really anything too intentional. Basically, it looked like Meerveld sort of made a little bit of contact with... there were 3 wide, obviously, going in, as you do. He made a little bit of contact with the car on the inside, and then ended up clipping the back end of the Bentley. When you go into replay, sadly, you lose all the livery, so I couldn't see the exact... It was bright pink, but I think it's the one with the big anime girl on the side of it, that Bentley. That he had a little bit of more collision with, and it just rotated his car. Yeah, he obviously had that slight bit of contact, and it just ended up being rotated It looked like the smallest touch, to be fair. I'm really surprised the car rotated, and just Matt York was just wrong place, wrong time, sadly, on that one.
Yeah, just we look on board the rear wing of Marlon, who got really close to the gearbox of Razier, but now has got Karekas all over the back of him. But that Ferrari is so strong, even in the slipstream, as I can see that there's also the number 41 car, Jay Fang, has gone off at Eau Rouge. Didn't see how that came about. Shooter 80 has gone off as well, so I'm assuming there may be contact between those two guys. So that is a big shame for them. Eau Rouge already managing to claim a couple of drivers there.
Oh, I think we've already lost 2 guys. We've lost 2 guys. I was trying to get Jay Fang to pop up on my screen. I couldn't. So we've lost Jay Fang, I think, already. Yes, and we've lost someone else as well. Who was that? Is that Yoris that we've lost?
I think it might be. Yep.
So we lost 2 guys. So not sure if that was a case of a bit of a rage quit or what's gone on there, but shame to see guys quitting out so early. Like we said, there's still the possibility of a lot of championship points here with this slightly reduced grid. And I mean, and every time someone leaves, you're just handing over points to your competitors, essentially. And
there's the rain.
So here's going to be the case of who can survive out there and who's on wets and who's on dries. That's the hard bit.
And how hard do you push? How much do you risk during this phase of the race? And yeah, but I have to say, a comment on that Ferrari. It is mighty fast in a straight line. Karekas even in... Oh, Karekas goes very, very deep in towards the bus stop. Just about manages to keep it sort of relatively on track then, but straight away, McLaren does have a tendency to sometimes go straight on during the braking zones if you're not careful with it. And with the rain coming down, maybe not quite enough ABS on that McLaren, but yeah, the Ferrari of Marlon with Karekas directly on his gearbox just gained nothing all the way up that back straight. So Marlon really doesn't actually have to get too close in order to maybe make a move happen. But these next few stages, next few minutes rather, of the race are going to be extremely telling. How hard do you push? How well is your car adapting to these different conditions? Who took the right pressures? Who took the right brake ducts in their setup to be balanced in these different phases of the race? And you can see just the amount the Marlon gains in that opening sector, but it just seems that Razier maybe has a car that's a bit more accommodating to these conditions, as he tends to open up the gap a bit in the second and third sector. So we'll have to see if that remains to be the case this lap. But yeah, a lot of movement up and down the grid. Just quickly jumping back, having a look at Meerveld, who was recovering, I think, from that contact earlier on in the race. He, I think, may have got past Dylan Gosling to get himself back into top 10. So despite a battered and bruised McLaren, he's at least managed to make his way some way up the order. But yeah, these next few minutes are going to be extremely difficult for these guys.
To get an idea of how much the wet is affecting their pace at the moment, Tommy Razier is already 4.2 seconds down on his previous lap. So that's a big difference. Obviously, we'll be able to see it. So his best was his last and best was a 2:18.8. So we'll get an idea of just how much slower it is in the wet. And so the smallest incident here can really mess you up. If you go off here, it's going to be absolutely hell trying to get back on. Anywhere that's got any grass, immediately going to be very difficult to get the car moving again. So here we go, coming down towards the bus stop. Oh, sorry, I do forget that I'm not running the caps.
Well, we're actually looking at that area of the track at the moment anyway, because I was on board with Marco Yonkers just to try to highlight how difficult these conditions are. And he repeated the sort of error that we saw from Karekas on the last lap, or the lap before, excuse me. Just going a bit deep into the braking zone at the bus stop. And again, just runs a little bit deeper than he would have liked at the hairpin of turn 1. But yeah, these conditions are so difficult, and the rain it shouldn't be lasting that much longer. So these guys have almost managed to get through this, as Razir had a very wonky line through Eau Rouge there. They've also got to be careful about warnings, because it's in these sorts of conditions where they can very easily start to accumulate. But Razir holding on to his position for the time being. Marlon, despite that top speed advantage on the back straight, as Razir goes very, very deep there, and that might give an opportunity for Marlon. Tommy getting all sorts of wheel spin as they head through Lecom, but Marlon just not quite able to make use of that opportunity. You can see it's like, I think it was the 2007 or 8 Formula 1 Grand Prix around here, where drivers were just spinning off left, right and centre. You had, I think, Lewis and Raikkonen doing 360s and exchanging positions purely on who could stay on the track for more than 10 seconds at a time. And you know, we're in the sort of levels of difficulty of that right now. And Tommy, you know, makes an error early on the lap, opens up a gap. He then went deep into Pouon there. He loses the gap. There's such a huge back and forth here, because every time you just get a bit of confidence to push, you go over that limit and you lose it all, and it becomes such a fine line. And depending on how long this rain hangs about on the surface of the track for, you know, these tricky conditions aren't just going to disappear immediately.
Makovkin just took a real big detour.
Oh dear, yeah, just seeing the rejoin. Struch might be able to pressure him here, maybe not for the time being, but yeah, by the looks of it, maybe just locking up and going deep through Lecom. These two both have quite severe time penalties, so it's so this is technically for position. Ben Keys behind them though will be hoping they don't battle for too long or hold him up. It'd be interesting to see whether or not that Ferrari can gain any sort of advantage. We've seen that Marlon's car is extremely fast on the straights, as Makovkin runs very wide as they head through Blanchimont. Struch, a better line through there. You can get track warnings through that part of the lap as well. Makovkin running very deep again. Struch, can he take a wide line through here? He's going to lose a bit of the track that he wanted to make use of there, but he does look like he's got the power down a bit better. The Bentley is very squirrely there. Ben Keys looking to try to make use of this. If he can get involved, Struch got to be so careful in his braking zone, as Makovkin locks up the rear axle there and heads off the track, so he's going to lose 2 positions now. Struch has gone from the attacker to being attacked, as Ben Keys looking to try to put him under pressure. And can that Ferrari make a move? Don't want to be looking to do it too early here on the run towards Eau Rouge. That's tricky enough at the best of times. They both run extremely wide, pushing each other to the absolute limits and beyond. But that Ferrari close to the slipstream, there's a dangerous puddle that can sometimes form over that crest. We've got through that okay. And Ben Keys does not look like he's got the same sort of straight line speed advantage that Marlon has. Oh, Makovkin has a huge lockup behind them. Makovkin, that's a few braking zones now. He's got to be very careful. That Bentley just really not liking to get stopped at the moment. But it does look like a Struch for the time being is going to be able to hold on to that position. But yeah, just showcasing how tricky it is in these conditions at the moment. This rain is still hanging about.
Really is. It has not shown any signs of going away yet. Quick update on our battle for second place. End of the Kemmel Straight, Andre made a big old mistake going into the chicane and lost a lot of ground to Caracas. Caracas all over the back of him, but then almost immediately at the bottom of the hill with that long right-hander, Caracas went deep and nearly lost a position to Yonkers. So they're all kind of spread out a little bit again, but there was a corner or two where I thought I was going to have to quickly butt in, but no, these guys are all just about holding it together, sort of accordioning in and out at the moment, and no one's able really to make a move at the moment. I think the main issue is, as soon as you go offline, even though there's no real proper dry line, there is still a slight optimum line to follow. I think as soon as anyone goes offline, the lack of grip is probably pretty shocking.
Yeah, there's not really there's not the greatest deal of dry line development in this game that we see in potentially other platforms, but it is still sort of there, and the aquaplaning and the puddles these drivers can experience at various portions of the circuit can be massively severe. Also just looking a little bit further down the order, we'll keep an eye on Yonkers and Correctus as well, because those two have closed up a bit. But just wanted to see how Oliars was doing, because he plummeted down the order initially. He can't have done a pit stop because he hasn't dropped far enough down. But for the driver that looked like he may have started on wet tyres, I would have thought that this maybe was where he was going to show some sort of form of resurgence, but it doesn't seem to have made a lot of progress. As jumping towards the round, Marlon's off! Marlon off on the exit of Rabion there, and that is a huge impact there for the Ferrari, and that surely is effectively going to be his challenge for the win over. We said, how hard do you push, and would you believe it, the rain has just stopped. So if he had held off for just a little longer, he might have been able to survive that and put more of a challenge towards the front, but he just pushed a bit too hard, and it's so tricky through that sector. And the Ferrari, we saw it was slippery in a straight line, and it was just a bit too slippery for its own good there in the wet conditions. That was a monumental impact, and that is going to be a devastating effect for him in this race. So fortunately the car still somewhat drivable to be able to get him back to the pits, but that is definitely going to be, well, you would have to expect his chance of a race win over. As I was looking in the background, Ben Key's got a huge amount of oversea. He actually got past Ostruch somehow over the last lap. Ostruch having a look down towards the inside of Puon, and he's going to try to get the drive as they head through there. This will be frustrating Ben Keys because Ostruch does have a penalty, but Ostruch is able to reclaim that position. So we didn't see how those two swapped around before, but a critical mistake there from Ben Keys. That's allowed Ostruch to get by once again, and Keys will be continuing to lose time. But, well, after everyone generally doing a fairly good job of surviving this tricky rain stint, it's all come crumbling down in the dying stages of this rain.
And the track already damp now, so it is slowly starting to dry up. We only lost 1 degree of track temp as well during that. I think it was 32 at the start of the race. It's still 31, so realistically not that big of a difference. But it'd be interesting to see who is going to come in. I did notice as well, Makovkin obviously already running with that 30-second penalty from previous races. Every time I look at him, he is miles off the circuit, so doing really well to hold on to his position. Oh, who's that? Someone dived into the pits.
Oh, that'll be Marlon, I believe. I don't know if anyone else has come to the pits. I'm
going to wonder if he is going to go for a tyre change as well. Try to have a look at his tyres as he goes past. I think they have got the yellow strip to suggest they are wet. I'm sure you can see that. It's very difficult at the moment. Obviously, everybody, quite a lot of people going for the blue and yellow Ukrainian colours. So difficult to know if that is wheel paint or if that is design on a tyre. Hoping the camera is going to let me see in a moment. I think that is the yellow marking on the tyre to suggest that it's a wet that he's on. So the only thing that could work in his advantage here is obviously he has to come in for tyres, or he has to come in for damage, sorry. So is he going to change over to dries now? It's still damp out there, but he might be able to make the best of a bad situation.
Yeah, you'd have to assume that given the forecast that these guys have currently got to work with, you would have to assume it'd be dries. It's going to be maybe a tricky few laps whilst the track is still drying out, but yeah, you'd have to presume that that's the strategy he's going to go with. We were also just having a look at Meerveld and Makovkin battling, as you say. Makovkin has been struggling around the circuit. Maybe you might find a bit of pace and consistency as the track starts to dry out again, but it has definitely allowed Meerveld, who's still driving that battered and bruised McLaren, so that's been a good effort from him, but he's been putting Makovkin under all sorts of pressure over the last lap or so as he's trying to go around the outside. See if that works to the inside for Campos. Not quite, but that Bentley does look extremely squirrely, particularly on the power, the diff in the Bentley, because of such a bulky car with the centre of mass so far forward. There's not actually a great deal of weight over that rear axle, and despite that humongous diffuser and rear wing to try to make up for it, in some of the slow speed corners, it really does not give you a lot of confidence on the power. Well, it's typically not such a good car to drive in the wet conditions, and it does seem to have caught Makovkin out a few times as he actually brakes on the entry there to Blanchimont and still runs wide on the exit. I wonder if Mirville will have a look down the inside. He thinks about a dive. Makovkin barely gives in the room, and there is contact at the bus stop chicane. Just about everyone keeping it pointing in the right direction. Mirville, though, will get a very nice cutback there as a result, and he will get in front of the Bentley on the back of that. That was it was a little bit of a, not exactly a late lunch from Mirville, but it was just a sort of an attempt at one, and it wasn't quite close enough for a fully committed dive. But Makovkin wasn't quite sure if he needed to give that space, as Mirville, I think, actually caught a little bit of the inside of the barrier on the run towards Eau Rouge then. So doesn't want to be getting any extra. As car 12, who's car 12? Connor Wright. Connor Wright is off at Eau Rouge, so there's another victim of Eau Rouge there, and after he was having such a good race, oh, that is huge damage to both of the Van Wall SimSport cars now. Crashing out of the top of Eau Rouge on the exit of Radion. I'm sure there'll be people commenting about that, but that is disastrous.
Yeah, he was sideways, mid Rouge, as you want to call it. He was already sideways before he got to the top. He was actually pretty much facing the pit exit as he was coming over the top of that final curb. So yeah, that's really done some massive damage. That BMW really looking, well, I mean, it was a bit piggy-nosed before, but now it's really got a damaged snoot, hasn't it? That's not looking good.
Between the M6 and the M4, it was said that it got a bit of a facelift. I think all of that work has been undone with that impact. That
he's really struggling as well, isn't he? Ben King just
a huge amount of damage. Possibly because the engine's in the front as well in the BMW, so that impact, although, you know, a nose-on impact in the Ferrari would have been pretty catastrophic, for the BMW that's even more severe.
Yeah, I wonder if I doubt it's done any actual engine damage, but I suppose all the weight is there on that front end, and he didn't get that rotation that the Ferrari sort of came in a bit more diagonal to the tyres and sort of rotated along the outside of them, but that BMW really just went in face first straight into that tyre wall. I mean, this is exactly why in real life it's being so heavily modified now, Spa. Well, I think it's pretty much done at this point, I would imagine. It's not that long into so when the big series starts up at Spa again. Track over to Greasy now, and there's a definite dry line.
Ollias is coming into the pits.
Okay.
We're just having a look at that sort of three-way battle for P6, but Ollias looking to come into the pits, so I'd be interested to see what he does. You'd have to presume that he'll look to go for dries, but an interesting time to look to make a pit stop there, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, and see how many other people, because I think that's our first stop that's been unprompted by a huge impact through Eau Rouge, so we'll have to see if anyone else comes out. As just having a look at Makovkin there, I'm sure that he's going to get a drive-through soon. He had to. The amount of times that he has skipped the exit, the apex of Radion, and cut across there and hasn't lost time is humongous. So I would be very surprised if he manages to get away with not getting a drive-through penalty for too much longer. And with just under 40 minutes of the race still left to go, it's definitely going to make it a long evening if he does manage to get one.
I just noticed that Connor Wright only just really got into the pits. He's still on the new pits. He's just turning now into the endurance pit, so still on his way to his box. Gives you an idea of just how long it took him to drag the BMW back to the pits. I am actually going to do a stopwatch from the moment he stops to the moment he starts moving again, so we know just how long he's in the pits for, but I would imagine it is a colossal amount of time. I don't think he's even doing the full pit speed. I'm not sure whether he's actually running as quick as he could through the pits, but he's about to come off the leading lap, that's for sure. Car number 2 of Razier already now coming through Blanchimont and down towards the bus stop. So that Van Wall SimSport, its pit is right at the end of its... Right, there we go. Timer is started. So I will stick with him and see how long it takes to come out, but I don't imagine it's going to be the normal quick splash of fuel and tyres and off we go. I think this is going to be a bit of a long one for him. So massive issues for guys right there at the front. Obviously, there's Connor right at the front, and Marlon also right there, quite high up in the championship. So basically, it's Rozier and Caracas need to kind of hold on, and if they can finish this race in anywhere near the positions they're in now, they are really going to outstretch their championship lead. So those two guys already have a reasonably dominant amount of points, but they could really, really put in some big efforts for those guys. It could be a really good advantage for them if they can hold it together. Who knows? Are we going to see any more rain in the second half? Still just over 37 minutes of the race left to go. And we saw multiple rain showers yesterday in Tier 1, so quite possible we're going to see different rain here again.
Yeah, we could absolutely, and yeah, Caracas, he really hasn't been able to execute the sort of level of pace that we've been sometimes used to seeing him have, and he is under a huge amount of pressure at the moment from Yonkers, who is not letting go of the gearbox of that McLaren. And, you know, in terms of the championship, if Yonkers gets past Caracas, that's another disadvantage for Caracas, losing out additional points to Rozier, and that just closes up that battle that bit further, going towards the last couple of rounds of this season. So, you know, Yonkers, he's running his own race. He's looking just to get in a good, what would be a really brilliant result for him if he can snatch away that P2 position. But the additional impact that can have on the championship, and that'll be Caracas' other concern, but at the same time, he doesn't want to do anything stupid. He's already thrown away some sort of healthy advantages by making mistakes and getting drive-through penalties, getting involved in incidents at previous races, and he really wants to make sure that he avoids doing anything like that. As old Makovkin, I said that I thought it would happen soon, and he has got a drive-through penalty. Now, oh, Meerveld's off! Meerveld's off and he's made contact with Makovkin. I don't understand. I didn't see how that initially happened, but I think Meerveld went wide on the exit of Campus there, and then as he bounced back across the track, caught the rear of Makovkin, and Terminen, very happily for him, got a 2-for-1 deal on the overtakes, and he's now under a bit of pressure from that Bentley, but it shouldn't provide him too much of a bother for too long, because that Bentley does need to go for a drive-through. But I don't know whether or not Makovkin will... Well, Makovkin, I believe, will have to serve that drive-through, and will have his 30-second penalty at his pit stop as well. So as Meerveld comes into pits, but yeah, that was a very curious instant there.
Just watched it back on the replay. Essentially, Meerveld went a little bit wide on the. God, I can't even remember the name of the corner now. My brain's just thrown a complete
I think it was
wobbly.
the exit of turn 14. I think that was Campus.
Yeah, so he went a little bit wide there. And that sort of started to rotate the car. He ended up then on the grass against the tyre barrier, and then the car was just sliding along that wet grass, wasn't able to stop. And yes, he did make slight contact with the Bentley. Not entirely sure if he was holding his brakes or not. Very hard to see, but it did look like that car on then tarmac was moving quite freely back towards the apex. Luckily, everyone managed to avoid him at that point, and he did get
sorry
both positions.
Sorry to cut you off there. Makovkin is just... well, he just outbraked himself at the end of the Kemmel Straight, and then basically floored it across the entirety of Lake Om, and retook the position ahead of Terminen. I imagine that he would have been given at least one warning for that, if not two. The game can sometimes dish out more than one warning at a time, but I'm not sure that. I don't know how the game works for if you go through a certain amount of warnings, but he's got to be careful here, because that was a very dare I say foolish move at the end of the Kemmel Straight there.
I think that was well. It looked like from what I just looked back on the replay, it looked like he turned in, and again the back end of that car started to sail round on him, and it is every single corner he's going into, that car is drifting through. And so whether that was a case of frustration, and then he put his foot down and went across the runoff area, but that really is not I'll come out and say it. That was not good racing. That really does.
It's
I think
very poor
some
standards
sort of
there.
penalty needs to come in on that, because that was fairly ridiculous. If that doesn't get reported, I probably will report that one myself, because that was a little bit messy. It has to be said. That was not cricket at all. Yeah, he's coming into the pits now.
Oh, sorry to cut you off there. Just the recovering driver of Marlon, who, credit to him, has not given up on this race just yet. Has just managed to make a move around the outside of Dylan Goslin at the end of the Kemmel Straight. And, yeah, Marlon has managed to sort of get back out and looks to be lapping quite quickly. I think, looking at the track map, he's got quite the gap to Oliar's ahead of him, but there's still half an hour left on this race, and he might be able to make something happen here. But if nothing else, does seem to have got himself into a top 10 position, which is very respectable considering the incident he had at the top of Eau Rouge. But yeah, sorry to cut you off there, Tim, but an interesting bit of action on track for the recovering Ferrari.
No, absolutely fine. As a quick update, rain in 15 minutes.
Oh, now that could be interesting. That could be very, very interesting. And if you're the likes of Razier right now, because, you know, Karekas, Keys, Makovkin, although he's not really in too much of a fight at the moment. I think he's just served his drive-through and he's still got a 30-second penalty, so he'll be very far down. Oh, he's just hit the barrier on the exit of the pit lane there, so that'll be some extra damage as well. Makovkin really not having a fantastic race today, but yeah, you know, with that rain coming down, it's heavy rain as well. It was light rain a second ago. It's back to heavy rain. So, you know, we're not even halfway through this race, but the likes of Karekas, Ben Keys, those guys have just done their pit stop. Surely now, if you're the likes of Razier and Yonkers, how do you play this? Do you risk stretching out this stint for another, you know, sort of 10 to 15 minutes and then try pitting for wets and seeing if you can stretch that to the end of the race? Or do you just try to cover off any undercuts now and hope that you'll reclaim the time later on and that everyone's in the same kind of position with regards to the weather? So this opens up some opportunities for drivers to maybe do something a bit on the daring side, try something a bit different, and depending on how this weather plays out, it could really be very, very rewarding for those guys that take just that bit of a gamble.
I'm just having a quick look. I just realised that Connor Wright still down in 15th. I did actually time how long he was. So this is just from the moment he parked in his pit box to the moment the car went back on the floor. It was 1 minute and 28 seconds. That doesn't include the time it took to drive into the pit or to exit the pit. So I think that amount of damage, a minute and a half. So, I mean, I think it's normally 30 seconds for tyres and fuel.
Yep,
I think that's kind of it. So then anything outside of that, it was a full minute of repairs to be done, which it could have been worse. And the fact that he drove back to the pits rather than teleported obviously would have given him a slight advantage. He wouldn't have had to sit there for so long. But yeah, Connor Wright, I would say that if he can get anywhere up, well, if he can get inside the top 10, that would be a massive effort, because the guys that are here this evening, it's a thin grid, but the guys that are here are all dedicated, serious racers. There's no Sunday drivers out here this evening, so these guys are all usually pretty reasonably well up there in the grid. Just having a quick look now. Obviously, Astrush in third place, obviously with that 30-second penalty though. So realistically, he's going to drop down a fair old chunk. Going to lose a couple of positions when he serves those penalties. Marlon actually just put in the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, he's driving very, very quickly. I was just looking at some of the deltas between these guys on the last lap. So last lap was for Razier was a 19.6. I'm interested to see what Yonkers done. It was a bit slower that time out. On the previous series of laps for these top runners, Yonkers actually gained a bit of time. So Razier kind of matching that. What lap time is Karekas going to do? I think this will be his first flyer, but bearing in mind that he was only a few seconds behind Rozier and was just ahead of Yonkers when he came in to do his pit stop. So, you know, this could be interesting to see what sort of lap times he's doing as to whether or not he may be able to take an advantage towards the front of the field. But again, you know, it could also all end up fizzling out to nothing depending on how this rain ends up panning out, because this is this is definitely the setup for an interesting final 25% of this race.
Yeah, 27.5 minutes left to go. Got at least rain in the next 15 minutes. We might see it do that weird disappearing into the mists of time for a little moment or two. But it's showing up still as very heavy rain as well, isn't it? So it's going to get wet, and it's going to get wet very quickly. So I wonder if Rozier, Yonkers, and some of the guys that haven't pitted yet, whether they are holding out pretty much until it starts raining, whether then they're going to come in. They can keep the lap times going. Let's say Rozier doing 2:19 on his last lap, Yonkers a 2:19, Astrush was a 2:20. I mean, yeah, when you compare that obviously to Caracas with the 2:18,
a low lap of the race on the last one. Yeah,
so, and actually quite a few of the guys that have already done their pits, they're all within the 2:18s, 2:19s. So the lower half of the grid that have pitted, they are now significantly quicker. But in the next 15 minutes, if those guys are on dries,
Tommy's in.
Tommy is in.
That is okay. So this is going to be a very crucial point, not just to see where he comes out relative to Caracas, but you know, it's going to be really difficult to tell, because I think realistically you either needed to sort of come in a bit earlier for that undercut sort of strategy, or you really needed to sort of wait that bit longer until you knew how you could commit in sort of what direction do you go with the tyres. Because, you know, people like Caracas or Rozier coming in now, they're going to be hoping that this rain is brief and that they want just a short shower so that it's no worse than it was earlier, then it might be difficult and tentative, but that overall that the slick tyres are probably the way to go for the remainder of the race. But if you're the likes of Yonkers, and I think Yonkers is going to be gambling that this rain is going to be coming down hard and is going to be here to stay for about the final quarter of this race. And if he gets that right, then even if the other guys don't do a second pit stop, he's probably going to come out not too far away from them on full wet tyres in heavy rain, and he will have a huge advantage in the remaining stages of the race. So, you know, Yonkers, I think, depending on how his weather pans out, I think Yonkers could seriously be someone to watch in the closing stages of the race. We're just looking at Caracas, who's coming into the bus stop now. So it'd be interesting to see. He's getting held up in traffic there by, I think that's, oh sorry, excuse me, it's not traffic. It's is actually truthfully poor position. That's that was Benjamin King, but I think King is a pit stop behind. And was that Rozier on the move? It is.
Yeah, Rozier is on the move. He's not out the pit. Yes, he is. Throttle goes to the floor, but Caracas is. Oh no, he's quite a long way back, isn't he? I don't think he's even going to catch him by the end of the Kemmel Straight. I don't think he will. Or who knows, actually. We'll see now in the back of the shot, I presume.
I think Rozier's got this. I think he has been able to maintain that position. And also, just an interesting note, that rain in 15 minutes has now gone down to light rain. Oh, Caracas gets all sorts of caught up behind Makovkin there. And he will be very, very frustrated about that. I mean, Makovkin is in his right to defend that position, but Caracas losing time now on what is a potentially a very key and championship-changing charge. And weather has gone back to dry in 15 minutes, so those guys that have pitted for the slick tyres, they will be very relieved about that. And Yonkers now may be in a very compromised position as Caracas all over the gearbox of Makovkin. as Bukovkin runs very, very wide on the exit of Pouon there. This is losing Krekas time hand over fist. Can he go around the outside of that Bentley? That is a fantastic move if he can hold on to that on the exit, and he will. He had to work extremely hard for that, probably harder than he was expecting to. Quite often we see guys that when you're coming up to cars that aren't in the same sort of race as you effectively, it does sometimes end up working out better for both parties to kind of let the faster driver by. But Krekas had to work hard for that one, but he has now been released and will set after closing down Tommy Razier. But Razier now with that fresh set of tyres, so we'll have to see what sort of laps they end up doing. Yonkers is still out at the front, and in the meantime Ben Keys has set the fastest lap of this race with a 2:17.8. I think 2/10 clear of anyone else's effort there for fastest lap. So that's a good effort from him there, and that's brought him in contention to close in on Oliar. So I have to keep an eye on that. But a very interesting stage for this race.
We got Benjamin King into the pits as well now.
Yes, we'll
so
have to
another
see.
guy coming into the pits. Oh, the rain is back for that 5 minutes, so possibly only going to be a little 5-minute shower. I really thought Caracas had played his cards right there, because obviously he came in sort of pretty soon after it dried off, put on those slicks, put in some really good lap times compared to Reyes, sorry, Razier, and I really thought he was going to get the cut. I thought he was going to be able to do it, but then yeah, just I'm not sure what happened. But somehow Razier managed to get that pit done a lot quicker than expected and straight back out the door again, and yeah, managed to hold on to the position. So really well done by him. Oh, it's now saying hard rain for the 5 minutes, so possibly going to be a hard or fast shower. It's going to come down at any moment, so anyone out there on slicks, you are going to be hoping like mad that you're not on a really fast bit of the circuit when that starts falling.
Yeah, this is going to be a difficult time for these drivers, and Yonkers, he's staying out, and I feel that the only reason he is doing this is that I believe he is going to gamble for the wets. Now, when that rain comes down initially, undoubtedly he will be the fastest car on the circuit, or at least in terms of the contenders for the win, he will be the fastest of those guys. And whilst the likes of Tommy and Caracas are struggling for grip, maybe even end up in some battles of their own, Yonkers theoretically will be in quite a strong position. Now, he is likely to come out behind these guys because Caracas and Razier have been lapping considerably faster than him during these last few laps. But when the rain comes down, if he is on wet tyres, I don't think it will be long for him to close up and to make overtakes. The difference in heavy rain conditions between those two tyre compounds is absolutely huge, and he'll just be looking to try to dispense of those positions as quickly as he can, and then just use that very brief shower. It looks like it may be only 3 laps at a push when the rain is actively coming down. Maybe an extra lap or 2 where it's going to still be a bit slippery and wet, and it will be in those remaining sort of those handful of laps at the end where Marco could be in a very tricky position. But I think he's going to be looking to gamble of just trying to get ahead during the rain phase, and then just defending with everything he has on what will possibly be a very dry track with some very, very volcanic wet tyres. And I'll be almost cheering him on after my own expeditions of such techniques at the Nürburgring a couple of seasons ago. So
yeah.
We'll have to see if maybe he can execute the strategy a bit better than I was able to. But I think this is the way that this approach is heading for Yonkers. And I think that depending on how severe that rain is and how long the track is wet for, it could really have a good chance of working out for him.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, obviously the whole if anyone knows about how to make wet tyres last, it is you. After your amazing escapades at Nürburgring, so I'm amazed the rain hasn't started to fall yet. I mean, any second that rain is going to drop, any moment now. So and I'm sure it looks like it's darkened off a little bit. Maybe midway through last lap, it definitely looked like the overall light on the circuit dropped off a little bit. say it's about 2:40 something. Annoyingly, my banner that I have on my ceiling has just dropped down slightly right in front of the race clock, so I can see how long is left on the race, but I can't see exactly what in-game time it is.
So about 20 to 3.
There we go, about 20 to 3. That's close enough. But yeah, Yonkers 0.2 down. It still looks like the rain is holding off at the moment.
I think this is what we'll be hoping for, though, because whilst Rosier did on that last lap, his last lap was invalidated because it was faster than his best, but it didn't count as his best. So Tommy definitely pushing, but there's about an almost a 2-second difference right now between Rosier and Yonkers. So which is a huge margin, and this does mean that Yonkers is going to come out several seconds behind Rosier and Caracas, but the amount of time that he will gain, and there's the rain that has just started to come down, and now this will be when, and this has actually fallen really well for Yonkers because he is coming through Blanchimont right now, so he doesn't have to spend too long on this lap in these conditions. Now, if my belief in what his strategy is correct, he will come into the pits. Now he doesn't. He stays out. That's I'm extremely surprised. Maybe he's just waiting for the rain to come down a bit harder. He doesn't want those tyres to burn up too quickly. There is a little bit of an overlap sometimes, but you know it's a long lap, and the track has already gone from green down to greasy because the rain is coming down thick and fast. I'm not convinced that was the right call there from Yonkers. I think he should have pitted, because I think by the time he does, pit stop here is almost about 2 minutes. He does run wide through a rouge. That was the difference maker of the rain going from a small amount to really heavy, and it's not just getting heavy; it's increasing after 5 minutes. So yeah, this is I think Yonkers will be looking to go for this strategy still, but I think he'll be. Wishing that he had taken that gamble at the time that he was coming across the pit entry, because I think that was the right time for him to pit, because he is struggling. Bear in mind how much older his tyres is in comparison to these guys, so he still might be able to make it work, but I think that may have potentially cost Yonkers this gamble strategy for the win.
I was trying to work out whether he's on dries or wets at the moment. I'm trying to remember. I'm sure he was on wets. So my only thought, and this is a bit of a wild one, if he's on wets from the beginning of the race, because obviously we saw there was going to be rain before the race even started, we could see it in the 15-minute window. My question to you is, if he was on wets at the beginning, and he obviously drove through the wet session, he stayed out during the dry session and just nursed the tyres on, and we could really see the lap times starting to tumble for him, do you think he is going to try and survive this entire wet session on these pretty worn wets, so that then when the rain stops, he can chuck a set of slicks on, and he's only going to have to do the one pit stop compared to others that may end up doing multiple pits? If he can get away with a single pit race, even if he is, a few seconds a lap down, it's still, like you said, a pit stop here is about 2 minutes. So if he can maintain it and just do the one pit stop, technically, he could still come out on top if he can survive. And there you go. I'm completely wrong. He's coming into the pit. So everything I just said, all that gumph and waffle I said for the last couple of minutes, complete trash.
Well, we've had one each now. I said that the rain would be here to stay. It ended up disappearing after 5 minutes. So trying to understand the Spa weather and the implications it has on strategy is as much of a challenge in itself as the driving probably is. But I think Yonkers has been on slick since the beginning of the race, and yeah, how does he play this now? Because 5 minutes time it's going to be light rain. 15 minutes time, so that's by the time we get to the end of the race, it will be dry. But it will be dry. It will have stopped raining. But the track temperature has dropped quite considerably, and we've got wind in this phase of the race as well.
Caracas. Sorry, where was that to? That was turn 10, 11, I think that was. He was in the back of the shot. I was watching Rosier, and there was a massive power slide from Caracas, obviously now in the wet, and it's fully wet now.
Yeah, this is extremely wet, and I think surely, yeah, Yonkers, I can only imagine, will go for this wet pit strategy, but in less than in 5 minutes' time, this rain will have disappeared, and based on the fact that the amount of time that Rozier and Karekis would have gained during that kind of undercut phase of their strategies, Marco, I don't know if he can recover. He'll be confident in the wet with those wet tyres, but I don't think he'll be able to recover that sort of level of time.
I thought we were about to see a change of position, but it's not. It was my eyes getting confused. I thought for a moment that Astrush had managed to play a very, very smart game, but no, not quite. So I think actually Rozier is about to take the lead. Or actually, maybe not. Car number 3 of Yonkers is already on the roll. So if he can get out the pit and get defensive, he might be able to hold on to it. So here comes Rozier, right, going to be on the pit exit line.
This could be really close, because if he is on the wets, Tommy's got nothing to play with here. Marco Yonkers has done it. I'm absolutely astonished. How on earth? That's twice
Rozier,
now. That's twice.
Rozier had absolutely no pace through Eau Rouge. He must have been on the brakes. He was going slower through Eau Rouge than Yonkers was coming out the pits. So whether it was a case of he knew he just could not maintain that pace on those tyres through there, or whether or not he maybe backed off slightly, thinking that maybe Yonkers was crashing or off, I'm not sure. But I mean, either way, Yonkers with an absolute genius play, and he's pulling away from him already. That is a car that has just come out the pits. Those tyres will not be up to full racing temp yet, and he is already giving Rozier the slip. So how long can he do it for? I'm not sure. Be interesting to see once they've both on a flyer as to what their times look like.
Well, by the looks of it, I'm sure at this point that Yonkers has gone onto the wet tyres, and he really does need to push now. This next couple of laps will be the difference maker as to whether or not he wins or loses this race. I have no idea how he emerged in front of Tommy there, other than just the sheer amount of pace that Tommy lost on those kind of on that last lap. But everyone was in the same sort of position, and Yonkers was on so much older tyres than any of these other guys, and yet somehow he's maintained position. I still feel like he should have come in for that one lap, 1 or 2 laps earlier, before he did. When that rain first came down, he was at the perfect point of the track, I think, to really take advantage of it, and he is absolutely blasting away from Tommy. And with 10 minutes left on the clock, the rain is meant to have gone in about 5 minutes. We might see a dry track with a few minutes to go, but you know, if it's just another lap or maybe even 2 with wet conditions, the gap that Yonkers is likely to be able to put over Rozier is going to be monumental, and whether or not that thermal deg in the closing stages of the race is going to be enough for Rozier to then close in, I honestly don't know, because his tyres will be suffering in temperature as well.
I think Rozier is in trouble. He came through the bus stop then, and he was crawling through an incredibly slow speed, and the gap between Yonkers and Rozier is already nearly 7 seconds. That's in a space of less than a lap. 7 seconds advantage by Yonkers now. That is absolutely ginormous. I mean, normally, if this was, let's say, a dry track, they both had equal tyres, and you looked at it and said, oh, there's 9.5 minutes left of the race, you would think that's quite a big effort. That's a second a lap, essentially, you'd need to actually catch up and then possibly make a move and get past. It's now nearly 9 seconds at the end of the Kemmel Straight as they entered Sector 2. That is absolutely ginormous. That time is still going on. I said the gap from Rozier to Caracas, 8.5 seconds. So the wet is really, really slowing them down. Again, we still can't even look at flying times, but I haven't seen Rozier get near an apex for about a lap and a half now. He is really, really struggling in the wet. He's so far off the pace. The bus stop went a bit deep and ended up middle of the road, and then really slow on the exit, and again into turn 1, really, really slow. Just wasn't doing the speed we expected to see, and he's just struggling everywhere.
Nothing, does he? He has absolutely nothing to fight with. There's just aquaplaning everywhere. But the rain has now stopped. So with just under 8.5 minutes left on the clock, the rain has now stopped, and Rozier will be cheering. Yonkers will be in despair. He wanted that rain to last as long as it possibly could. But I think, you know, looking at these conditions, it's going to take another good couple of laps for the track to dry out, and it's really not going to be until the track properly starts to dry out again that Tommy's tyres will be at a reasonable advantage, because, you know, Yonkers at this point is, you know, is several seconds ahead
as well.
It's a huge gap.
12.3 seconds. I don't think that's possible. Even on a normal dry circuit, I don't think 12.38 seconds is possible in less than 8 minutes. Not here. It's not the easiest place to get past. You can defend reasonably well. And even though, like you said, the rain has stopped falling, but the track is still full wet. It's still a full wet circuit. So even though the rain has stopped falling, the advantage is still Yonkers at the moment. I mean, I would even say once it starts going greasy or damp and greasy, you're still, realistically, looking how worn Razier's tyres are, it's still advantage Yonkers, and there's now a car between them. There's now a back marker between them. Car number 12 of Connor Wright, who's running in 15th place. Obviously, like we said, after his big crash earlier, dropped right the way down the grid. He might regain a position from Makovkin. Oh, and there you go. Razier spins on the entrance of Eau Rouge. He keeps out the tyres, but and that's probably going to be Caracas is now catching up with him, because Razier's got to try and get that car going again. Caracas flying through, gets a much better run, to the battle for second place might be kicking up, and Caracas will be...
Caracas got a huge kick of oversteer over that puddle. That was huge.
I think he saw the advantage coming his way. Car number 742 just had an injury as well. Marlon, I just saw a yellow flag at the bus stop. Not sure what happened with him there, but that's it. Caracas all over the back of him. They did really similar laps last lap, but that's the last thing Tommy wants. With 23.1 seconds between him and Yonkers, first place is gone. It's now going to be the battle for second place. All Yonkers has to do is survive for essentially 2.5, well, maybe 3 laps. If it's 6 minutes left on the clock now, he's just coming to the end of sector 2. So realistically, by the time he crosses the line, it's maybe 2 laps, 2 full laps for him to survive with 23 seconds of time. That's insane. And now Razier is in no way going to be able to take the fight to him. It's still wet on that track. Caracas is about half a second behind. Yonkers has just played this game perfectly. I mean, absolute round of applause. I hope so much he joins us afterwards, because I just more want to give that man a round of applause for his strategy choice. Like I said, neither of us thought it was going to work. I thought he was going to stay out later. He didn't. You thought he was going to come in earlier. He didn't. This man, we need him to be our pit strategist, I think, in the future. Which is he on an endurance team? I almost need to know, because he needs to be in charge of pit strategies. Insane. Absolutely insane. Sorry, I've been waffling for ages. So they go 5 minutes left on the clock, and Yonkers has just crossed the line. So depending on his pace, it's going to be 2 laps, maybe 3 if he can really push. But I mean, he would almost do himself a favour to stay sub 2:30. So then he's only got to do 2 more laps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there was a chance for Razier for Razier to kind of challenge that last lap. I mean, Caracas had a pretty clean lap there, and he was still 4 seconds off the pace of Yonkers. Now, I would imagine that over these next couple of laps, the advantage will come back towards these guys on the dry tyres. But, you know, and if Razier had been able to stay within that margin, maybe he would have had a chance. But yeah, with that mistake, that was a huge mistake from him. And as he got quite a poor line through a rouge there, Caracas might be in a position to... Oh, Caracas gets a huge moment over that puddle again. The car just aquaplaning over that puddle, and you know, we've seen some of the guys in Tier 1 trying to avoid that puddle over the crest. Caracas quite happy to risk driving through it every time, but it does... well, it's exciting for us to watch. I imagine it's terrifying from the driver's perspective. And now, you know, we've got our 2 championship contenders looking to try to battle for P2 after, you know, really... After what was a surprising turn of events strategy-wise. I'm still shocked that Marco, after the pit stops, came out in front. I thought that he would be able to maybe maintain a tyre advantage and get past these guys, but how on earth with the laps that Tommy and Karekes were doing, that he ended up in front of those two. You know, the timing of the rain, it lost those guys so much time. As there's a car in front of Tommy and Karekes, I think that's Shooter 80, that's pulled over to the side. I've got a feeling actually there might be damage on that car. That's another BMW. I think that's the old BMW that's had another facelift that's not panned out too well at all. As jumping back, sorry, to Oliars and Terminen. I think Terminen is on the wet tyres. Because he did a very, very late pit stop at the same sort of time as Yonkers, and Oliars did a pit stop for dries at about 40 minutes, if I remember correctly. So his tyres are extremely old, and Terminen is looking very, very fired up. The track will be gradually coming towards Oliars, but with that sort of level of degradation that he will have had, how much pace does he have left in the car? Shooter 80 getting clear out of the way of the track for those guys. Also having to keep a bit of an eye on Karekes and Razir as well. I think we'll get 2 more laps of this race. I think Oliars is going to maintain his position for now. We've also got Meerveld and Astruch battling.
I think this is last lap. It was exactly 2 minutes 30 when Yonkers crossed the line, and he has done a 2 minute 30.7. But I would presume he is going to maybe lift off ever so slightly for that, cross the line. It would be a mistake, I think, for him to keep pushing and possibly to do another lap.
It certainly jeopardises his chances, doesn't it?
If he doesn't need to do it, he's won it on the road already, essentially. I'm still going to stop talking because the battle, Razir and Karekes now fighting out at the end of the Kemmel Straight. Also, possibly the battle for 10th place might be a little bit hot as well. There's about half a second between York and Gosling. No, they're just about to start their final lap as well. So that's Bentley versus Bentley. And I imagine they'll both be pretty keen to try and get inside the top 10. But there you go. Here we go. Yonkers just coming down towards the beginning of Sector 3. So he is miles ahead of everyone. I really, really hope he realises that he doesn't need to beat the clock. He can just let it, tick on a little bit more. It'll do him favours. The track still damp. So at this point, I would say that almost a slick probably is the advantage tyre.
Yes, it's definitely come the way of the slick guys now. The fact that Yonkers has actually remained so competitive, he's still fastest car on the circuit on that last lap. So the fact that has that he's been able to maintain that advantage now, how does he play this? So he's got 5 seconds to go. I think it's going to basically work out perfectly for him.
Yes!
It's going to let King go by, and with an absolute masterclass strategy there from Yonkers, he will win his first race of the season with just an absolutely brilliant strategic play from him. Karekes and Razir still battling towards the final sector. It's been... these guys actually haven't been too close to one another during most of the race, but Razir's mistake at the end won't cost him. He'll be very grateful about that. He almost lost that advantage to his championship rival, but he was able to hold on to it at the end. I think Terminen has done his best to try hunting down Oliars, who has made, Oliars to be fair, made an incredibly early pit stop and survived all of those rain phases to then take a very respectable P4 for him. But my goodness, what a brilliant race there from Yonkers.
Oh, I think it might still actually see a move into the bus stop here. Astruch right on the back of Meerveld. Tries to go around the outside. I think is he going to get in front? No! Yes, he's up the inside. He's up the inside. He actually makes the move work. Oh my god!
What a brilliant last lap.
Will be livid, and I think actually then again the next guys across the line as well. Goslin and York, they're right by side. York looking up the inside into the final turn of the bus stop. Can he do it? No, he can't. Not able to make a move there. No,
Can
no
he get
change.
a cut back? He's on a better line, but I think he's going to run out of track. Oh, constantly struggling to get the power down, but the Bentleys, yeah, crossing almost side by side. I think York actually braked a bit earlier than he needed to there. He looked like he was sort of going for that typical Daniel Ricciardo like switchback, as I think the last car on track is Makovkin, who seems to have crashed up at Eau Rouge.
I think he's actually crossed the line. He's seen the checkers. He's seen the checkers. The only person that hasn't, I believe, is Shooter, who obviously we saw badly injured. And,
So he's come into the pits. So that's interesting. So who's the number 21 car? That's Oliar's. We know that he's come across the line.
I think he's doing his in lap, essentially. I think he's doing the full in lap.
The race should have, I think, theoretically should have finished though. I'm not sure.
I wonder if that's because Shooter hasn't crossed the line because he's in the pit. I think
potentially.
So I'm guessing he's still technically. Oh yeah, he is out. He is out the pit. He's doing his final lap. Just noticed it there. Kind of a 1:17.
So maybe just a weird timing there with his car in the pits.
I think he must have been on like pit exit when the clock ran out. So he was technically not in the pit. So he still gets to finish his race, I would presume, even though the timer on the overall race is finished, then it's just the race end timer that's running down. But I don't even think we run a race end timer here, do we? It's just a case of finishing.
I think there is a small remaining clock. I think it's usually more than a lap's worth of time, I think. But I'm not 100% sure on that. So I've got a worrying feeling that Shooter 80 might. Yep, he's not actually going to technically finish the race.
Nope.
He's run into the same sort of trouble that that I did after my glorious double puncture finish at Nürburgring, where despite my best efforts, didn't quite make it to the end to officially cross the line. But yeah, that will be it. Well, what an absolutely astonishing strategic play there from Yonkers, even sort of maybe slightly slowing down on that final lap. And he did lose 3 seconds, so the tyres were definitely going, or the track was coming the way of the slick tyres. Quite a rapid rate near the end of that race, but he still won by almost 25 seconds. Now, admittedly, Razier's mistake did account for a portion for that, but I think even if Razier had not made a mistake, I don't think there were enough laps for Razier to be able to make up that gap to Yonkers. And Yonkers, yeah, I still think that maybe that earlier lap pit stop could have helped him, but he certainly played the long game to absolute perfection.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a case of. I think he was about 12 seconds ahead, even before the mistake from Razier, and that just compounded the issue, like doubled his lead, essentially. I'm just having a quick look where Yonkers is he's 7th overall in the championship, so that's going to probably give him quite a decent boost to his old championship points, I would presume. Just having a little look at guys that we didn't see. Obviously, J-Fang and Vajoris we never saw finish. They quit out very early in the race. So I'm not sure what happened with those guys. But I mean, I think there's no questions asked. 100% driver of the day is Yonkers. There's just no questions on that at all. I think, in my opinion, that was, I mean, obviously we saw a great drive by Ben Keys to recover after that earlier incident. Meerveld managed to get himself back up through the field reasonably after, obviously, incident on lap 1.
Marlon was on a good charge as well, but that late that late shower just completely demolished his chances. I think he was actually running around P6 and was doing fairly well. He was sort of in empty space, but those last 15 minutes saw him drop down. But considering that he had a huge impact with the wall and the exit of Radeon, that to finish P9 and still get some sorts of points together from this race, I think he'll at least be somewhat consoled by that. But yeah, absolutely, without a doubt, Yonkers driver of the day, strategy master of the day, just everything really. He kept such a calm and cool head when he was locked onto the gearbox of Caracas for so many laps, and you know, and we had Razir out front, we had Marlon that was putting him under sort of some level of pressure, and Yonkers was just kind of hanging in the background, just putting in consistent laps, letting other people make mistakes, and then just bided his time perfectly to execute what was an absolutely brilliant strategy call to make that one work. And you know, this is the sort of outcomes that we can see from the dynamic weather at Spa. This level of randomness and kind of random placements of showers, the severity of the showers, how long the lap is, how difficult the track is, the amount of difficulty and strain it puts on the drivers to uphold that level of concentration. You know, Tommy Razir is still the only double winner of this championship, and it even caught the better of him to lose it despite being in such a strong position for so long during that race. So yeah, Yonkers did absolutely everything perfectly during that, and yeah, he played it to perfection from start to finish, and a thoroughly deserved victory for him at probably one of the most difficult races that we've had all season, and definitely one of the most random.
Yeah, weather-wise, definitely the most random we've seen so far. I mean, if I'd said at the beginning of this race, Yonkers is going to win, you know, no disrespect to the man, but you probably would have said, I don't think he is. But yeah, especially when we've seen the pace that Razir and Caracas have got. But here we go. This is another example of racecraft over pure outright pace. Caracas and Razir have got insane pace, but just made the wrong call on this one. And Yonkers got his strategy absolutely spot on. I mean, like I said, both of us questioned it. We both thought it was going to go wrong for him. But he managed to get out the pits at the exact right time. And as we said, Razir was coming through Eau Rouge at the same time. And we just thought, he's lost it. You know, he's definitely lost pole. But just the fact that he was on the right tyres, the right time, they were fresh. He just hammered away from him. Razir never stood a chance. Even, you know, you'd think Kemmel straight, you would have the run. He just didn't. He just couldn't maintain the pace compared to Yonkers. So, I mean, absolutely amazing effort. Sort of holding on in desperation that hopefully he joins us in the commentary box. I don't think he's going
unfortunately, he's not. He said that his Discord doesn't work in the on the in-game chat, which is a big shame. Because would have loved to have spoken to him and find out what that race was like from his perspective. But I'm sure that he will be jumping for joy from that result. But
yeah. Was absolutely fantastic drive by him. Like we said, he 100% gets driver of the day on that one. That was absolutely fantastic drive for him. And just a quick one. Look how dominant the McLarens were here this evening. Such a, like, you know, they're all but one inside the top 10. Really good. Someone I think that deserves a little bit of a shout out as well is a Strush taking on Meerveld and that final corner.
And he had a 30-second penalty. Don't forget that he had to serve that penalty.
He did serve the 30-second penalty. I suppose, yeah, because Meerveld had his incident earlier in the race with a crash as well, so that would have obviously probably cost him around 30 seconds. So that would probably be what sort of leveled those two off. But yeah, I mean, yeah, fantastic race by everyone. Random weather, random result. And really good to see, there you go, a Lexus inside the top 5. Again, not what I expected to see, but this is the thing of having that smaller grid. Everything's a bit more chopped and changed. You know, the pack didn't split up quite so much because you didn't get these large groups of cars battling. You normally get sort of like 5 of the leaders pull away, and then you get these little packs build up, but that didn't happen this evening where everyone was at a bit more running space. And everything's gone Yonkers' way. Fantastic drive by him. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be joining us in the commentary booth, sadly.
Doesn't look like it, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it was an absolutely fantastic effort by everybody. I mean, what else can I say, really? I'm gobsmacked. Absolutely fantastic race. I was a little bit worried it was going to get a little bit stale in the booth. But actually, no, absolutely amazing. Absolutely great.
Yeah, absolutely. And if nothing else, I think what it showcased is that again in AOR and in and in Tier 2 as well, that even with a smaller grid, that we had action up and down the field. We have just such a great talented grid of drivers that gives us brilliant on-track battles, and it gives us these amazing strategic plays as well that factor into it and just keep us on our toes the entire time. So it was a fantastic race from everybody all round. As a final roundup then of the finishing order, Marco Yonkers, after that brilliant call strategy-wise, takes his first win of the season. I'm sure he will be absolutely delighted about that, and a dominant one in the end as well. One of our largest winning margins, I believe, as well. Almost 25 seconds for him. Razir somehow, despite making that mistake, barely kept out of the wall, and in doing so, just about kept his championship hopes intact, as he was able to edge out Karekes and hold on to that P2 position. So does look like we're setting up for an interesting couple of final rounds between those two guys. Karekes then crossing along the line in P3. Didn't really seem to have the pace today that we would often expect from him, but still a solid result nonetheless. Oliar's great comeback from him after quite a daring strategy, and just again effectively drove a lot of the race by himself, just putting consistent laps, and was able to get P4 in the end, just in front of Terminen, with a good result from him. Ben Keys, another solid effort to finish in P6. Struch, a very sort of understated drive there, I would say, from him. If it hadn't been for that 30-second penalty, he would have been looking to be in a sort of top 5, maybe even top 4 positions. So, still positives for him to take away from this, and a good result from him. Mirveld, challenging race for him in P8. Marlon has such a good chance in the early stages of this race to challenge for the win, but just didn't come together in the end. P9 for him. Dylan Goslin gets a top 10 finish, which I think is by far his best result of the season so far, so good things for him. Matt York tried to snatch it away from him, couldn't quite. He finishes P11. Benjamin King down in P12. Connor Wright did try to come back after his crash at Eau Rouge, but was unable to make up too many positions, so P13 for him. Last week's winner not having a good round. Makovkin, definitely a difficult race for him. 2 drive-through penalties and a 30-second penalty saw him fall down the order quite severely, but still strong pace at times for him in that Bentley, so he'll be looking to try to bring that sort of pace over the next couple of rounds. And then Shooter 80 finishing, I think, a couple of laps down, well, technically DNFing, but a couple of laps down off the leaders for a difficult race for him. And then Jay Fang and Robert Vioris DNFing from the race. I'm not sure if we had any more DNFs, but that is at least where my ACC leaderboard runs out there. But
nah, pretty sure it was 17 that started. Well, it was 17 in the server when the race went live. So yeah, I don't think we lost any more than just those 2 at the end.
That's good. So not too many DNFs in the end, which is good, all things considered, because it was certainly a very difficult race for all of these guys. It was a very tricky one to contend with the conditions and trying to remain positive when these things go wrong, trying to maintain that spirit to push on through those conditions, and just seeing what you can extract from the race, and taking that sort of mindset of Yonkers, where he just kept on waiting for that weather and for his opportunity to finally come along, and then when it did come his way, he absolutely seized it and took it with both hands. So so a huge amount of kudos as well to everyone that finished the race. But that looks like that will be it. Unfortunately, no interviews for us today, which is a shame. Hopefully, maybe we'll be able to catch up with some of the guys next week. And what track is it that we are heading to next time?
It is Zolder, and next round is 90 minutes as well, so it's an hour and a half rather than the standard 60-minute races. So yeah, we are in Zolder next week, and it's looking like it is a 100% chance of dry race. 0 changing conditions, 0% chance of wet. So after this race, I think a few of the guys will be pretty happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be the case. Yonkers maybe would have been hoping for some more random conditions so that he could execute that quite clearly a brilliant strategic mindset that that he has in the cockpit of that McLaren. But we'll have to see how that ends up playing out. It'd be interesting to see who is faster as well. I think that's a circuit where the likes of the Bentleys might start to come alive a bit more, so we might see stronger performances from Makovkin, who, you know, we've seen has had good raw pace but just hasn't quite been able to put it together. But again, it is a tricky track in the sense of corner cuts and drive-through penalties, so it's going to be a challenging one for these guys, and we could see that cost people a chance of a race victory, a bit like we've seen at Donington earlier on in the season. So we'll have to see how it plays out for them, but that is what we have to look forward to next week. So thank you very much everybody for joining the stream, and hope you enjoyed all of the action. Any final words from you, Tim?
No, just again, driver of the day, Yonkers, absolutely amazing effort. Very, very difficult conditions this evening. All drivers doing very well to stick it out and try and get their way to the end. Obviously, as we said, it was a slightly thinner grid than normal, but everybody that was there put on a great show for us, and hopefully they'll do the same again next week at Zolder. And I think the championship is still very much up in the air. Who knows who's going to win this one?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the way we like it. We like to see battles going all the way to the end. It maintains a great sense of excitement and drama in the championship, and I have no doubt that these guys will once again give us a fantastic race next week. So that will be all then. So thank you very much, Tim, for joining me once again in the commentary box. Always a pleasure. And we shall see you all again next week. It will be Tier 1 on Monday, and then we will be back again for Tier 2 a week from now. But until then, good night.
Good night, guys.